Welcome, pool guys and gals, to the Let's Talk About Pools podcast, where your host, Lauren Broom, will take a splash into many topics in the pool industry to educate all aquatic professionals. Listen in, and you just might be surprised what you'll learn. So let's jump right in.
Welcome, everybody, today to the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. And on episode 40, I got to interview Vito Mariano, owner of Basecrete. And we talked about waterproofing concrete pools and all kinds of things. He's such an expert on this. So I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. And I wanted to say thank you to our awesome podcast sponsors in this episode, which is Skimmer and Blu-ray Etzel. Please check them out. And thank you for being a sponsor of the Let's Talk About Pools podcast and continuing education to the pool industry. So let's jump right in, guys. Hey, everybody. In this episode, too, I wanted to introduce the Hurricane Ian Relief Fundraiser that's sponsored by Vito Mariano with his company Basecrete and Danilo Bonazza with Art and Mosaics. He does the most beautiful mosaics. You got to check out his website, too. But if you go to basecretecares.com, you can click there and donate to help out our pool professionals down in Southwest Florida that were impacted by Hurricane Ian. So if you go to basecretecares.com, you should be able to find that relief fundraiser. And let's go ahead and help our industry. They had houses damaged, businesses damaged, and they're helping other people down there as well. So let's help them out so that they can recover as quickly as possible. And for every CPO student right now going to a CPO class, Space Coast Pool School is donating a certain amount to this relief fundraiser as well. So join me and Space Coast Pool School in that initiative. Enjoy the episode, guys.
This is Skimmer, software for the modern pool professional. What can you do with Skimmer? See all your customers on a map, build service routes quickly, and let Skimmer optimize them for you. Access customer information, including contact details and full service history, anytime and anywhere. Customize work orders to track jobs like repairs and filter cleanings. Email your customers when you complete a service. You can include service details and on-site photos. Does your customer need a part? Add it to the shopping list and track it from purchase to installation. Skimmer will even remind you what parts you need for the day, and you can mark them as installed right when you're finished. Skimmer doesn't just store your service history, it helps you get paid. We integrate with QuickBooks Online for fast, easy invoicing. And we've got more billing options coming soon. All that's just the beginning. Go to getskimmer.com to watch our demo video, check out our online tutorials, and see if Skimmer is right for you.
Welcome, everybody, today to the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. And on my episode today, I have Vito Mariano, owner and CEO of Basecrete Technologies. Welcome today, Vito. How are you?
I'm good, Lauren. How are you this morning?
I'm awesome. So I was very excited to have you on. Other than you're one of my awesome podcast sponsors, and I appreciate that so much for helping to educate our listeners in the pool industry through the podcast. And so I wanted to thank you for that, Vito.
Yeah, my pleasure as well. Thanks.
So tell the listeners a little bit about Basecrete Technologies, yourself, how long, background about yourself, how long you've been in the industry, your extensive background, because you got an awesome background.
Well, that is for sure. It goes back many years now. I'm 63 years old, and the company, as I'm trying to step back, the company keeps growing. So I have wonderful staff that definitely helps me keep everything in check and in gear moving forward. Our business basically almost doubles every year since we started, believe it or not. And I'm grateful for that. My background goes all the way back till before I was a teenager, working with my father's construction company. It was tough work. It was hard work and under crazy conditions. Otherwise, and my father being a typical European, it was always about work ethics. Get up 5 o'clock, have your 4 shots of espresso. I was 12 years old. I was already hyper before I even got to the truck, and that's how it started for me. And then having to figure out what I wanted to do for a living, I got a scholarship for music, And my father said, well, that's nice, but you're not going to be a musician. And if you do, first you got to learn a trade. I learned the trade. I spent 5 years under my apprenticeship under my father, and I learned the trade. It was always in the masonry, concrete industry. So my dad had a fairly large company, and I guess the unions kind of wiped them out at the same time. So he went back to being kind of a hardworking guy for the rest of his life with amazing work ethics. And I picked that up from him. Went to school at night, got married, had kids, and I wanted to come up with different compositions for concrete. For some reason, it was in my head about building bridges. I never started to build bridges. That never worked out. But I learned an awful lot about concrete. And by 1996, I had 6 patents already. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, I've had so much fun with it. I really have. I get a little bit burnt out at my age now, but there's still, when I have my time off, I get in my little lab and with, I light a cigar and a bottle of wine. I look like a gangster in there with my clothing, and I work on different things I come up with concrete. I've got some really good stuff. Actually, I got some good stuff into 4 different laboratories for testing. The new thing for me is the new ICF industry. I've got the only specification that's been put out in the industry for ICF, which is working out really good. Due to the fact that swimming pools and contractors have been so busy over the last couple of years, that the workmanship and having to get these workers trained properly is becoming less and less and less. And when that happens, there's innovative people like myself that try to come up with a new concept. And I've been working with a few different ICF manufacturing companies to come up with swimming pools that are built out of ICF. It's working out really good.
Tell our listeners what ICF is.
It's insulated, insulated concrete foam. So it's a 2-inch expanded polystyrene, and 8 inches away is another 2-inch expanded polystyrene. So the R value is unique. It's great. Inside, it's filled up with steel and concrete. It's now acting as a form for concrete, not just concrete. It's basements, walls. Right now, it's approved up to 10 stories. So what we're doing is, in order to put the finishes on the ICF, we're using Basecrete as a flexible waterproofing cementitious membrane to make it more solid. So you can actually put plaster, you can paint it over, you can put violet, or you can tile them. I've done about 20 of them so far with really good results. And I think we're going to be ready to go on the market in about 3 months.
Wow, that's exciting. Any other new things? Any other new things coming out with Basecrete?
Yeah, I've got my On Deck, which is my new waterproofing decking system. They're looking at changing the mandate for starting with hopefully the state of Florida, where all suspended decks and pools have to be waterproofed. I kind of predicted that about 8 years ago, and I think it's about time that that's going to take place. And our expansion is now in Europe and the Caribbean. We have distributors in 23 countries. We're now blending in France. We're blending in Italy, and I'm hoping by the end of March in Lisbon, Portugal, we'll have a blending facility there as well.
Wow. That's exciting. You're all over the world.
Yeah, as I'm preparing for retirement, as you can see, I don't think it's going to happen for a long time. They'll just find me stiff in my office one day. That's the day it's over.
You're going to work until you're stiff in the office, you're saying?
I'm going to work till I'm a stiff in the office. Yeah. It's exciting. I mean, we have, my kids are all adults. I've only got 2 of them involved in the business, and they're wonderful. They really are. They work so hard, and they really take care of me. It's like the other day I walked in the office. They just looked at me and said, well, what are you doing here? I go, well, what do you mean, what am I doing? Well, you should go home, take the day off. I go, okay. So I worked from home is what I did. So.
Family's an important thing to you. I know that we've spoken before, and it exudes in your business that way as well, and how you relate with people and your customers, I think. So that's a wonderful quality that you have.
Well, thanks, Lauren. I think it's all about energy. Definitely have a lot of energy, and that helps to wake up in the morning at 5:30, and I have what I call my quiet time, which is from 5:30 to 6:30, and my dog joins me in the morning, and I go through my emails that usually come in from overseas. I have by 6:30, I've got at least 8 espressos into me. So I still have it in me now. I'm still, as you can see, I'm talking very fast. It's wearing down.
So let's tell our listeners, they're new to waterproofing, concrete pools and that kind of thing. Let's just kind of talk about what you have to offer, and their understanding of waterproofing concrete, when it comes to swimming pools and that kind of thing, kind of the basics.
Well, this basic rules that I've always implied of why, first of all, concrete has to be waterproof. You're always trying to find a way for the steel to be protected. The worst thing for concrete is water itself. The worst thing for concrete with iron and rebar is water itself. You're not going to be able to prevent it because it's always going to be exposed to thermal. It's going to be exposed to moisture, changing temperatures. And we want to be able to prevent rust or moisture to hit the surface. And pools, and I keep saying they've changed so much in the last 10, 15 years, where, 15, 20, 30 years ago, the pools were typically all the same. They were just basically looked at as a swimming pool. Now they're so elaborate, computerized. They're glass. There are all these beautiful different colors of plaster. You want to be able to protect those surfaces because, the beauty of the pool is what you're looking at the majority of the time. So the basic structure is concrete and steel. That has its own little beast that we deal with all the time. It's like buying a Rolls Royce with not putting a good prime underneath the paint. It can show up very quickly on your surface, and that's what you're looking at most of the time. Well, and so our goal is always to be able to extend that beauty in that swimming pool. That's really important. And water's the damage to mostly all of it.
Blu-ray XL is the power of minerals working for you. Reduce your overall chemical costs and labor up to 50% guaranteed. Whether you have 20 accounts or 20,000, Blu-ray XL's direct pricing and free shipping to the pool trade have you covered. Improving pool professionals' profit and work-life balance is what they do. Blu-ray XL, the real mineral purifier. Visit them at BluRayXL.com.
Blu-ray all day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And let's talk about some of the new standards and that kind of thing for elevated pools or suspended pools that we're seeing.
Yeah, well, because of the disaster that happened in South Florida a year ago, there's been a lot of changes, and there's been a lot of conversations and buzzing behind the scenes with engineers, architects, and lawyers. There's a lot of lawsuits that are going to be flying around because of what is happening, what's taking place, and concrete has to be protected for a lot of reasons, and that's what our specialty is the waterproof concrete. So the changes that are coming is the fact that waterproofing swimming pools and decks are very important to the longevity of the buildings and the structures themselves. And that's why we're busy. We're very busy here doing that. And I work with a lot of engineers all day, every day. It's what I do. It's really kind of my specialty.
Yeah.
I do a lot of training with engineers, and they call me for advice a lot. And we don't expect them to know everything. I mean, I've been in this business for 40 something years, so I've seen it all. And I don't mind. I love giving the advice and love talking to engineers about them because we have to find out where we need to be specifying certain materials and change the specs or put certain specifications together for the industry, which truly makes it better for all of us. We don't want a disaster like we saw in South Florida, which was a shame. Yeah.
Now, you were on a standard committee with PHTA, which is Pool and Hot Tub Alliance, PHTA 10 standard. And
Yes.
What was that specifically on? And that was before the collapse of the condo that happened in June of 2021.
Yeah,
where it's suspected that maybe it was, but it's no confirmation. We're not going to say we've confirmed that or not.
No, I'm not going to say. Yeah,
tell us a little bit about that standard committee that you were on and what you guys kind of came up with on that.
Yeah, so what we came up with, so the standard was basically for suspended pools. So that whole standard was to look at what we needed to do in order to change the standard and make it mandatory on suspended pools. You have suspended pools that are just constant flexing and moving. Some engineers know how to put those specifications together. They're going to move no matter what happens. We want to be able to put a membrane on there that is flexible and very adhesive. We don't want to crack and then there's water leakage out of that pool. So the mandate was to make those changes so decks and waterproofing pools are properly waterproofed. And there's different degrees, there's different variations of waterproofing. If you put enough pressure through a pane of glass, you're going to get water go through it. If you go all the way down the opposite way to a cinder block, you're going to be able to, at much less pressure, get water to penetrate it. So we decided as long as it's 0.01 in percentage wise of permeability, then we would consider that as a good waterproofing membrane. From that, less were ideal. I was only brought on because of my expertise and my background in the suspended pool industry, waterproofing. I can't even tell you how many we've done. I guarantee we've done the majority of them and still do.
With the standard, explain a little bit. They talk about pods and that kind of thing in the standard. What is that about?
Well, the pods are, in case there's a disaster inside the vessel itself, there's a containment vessel underneath it, which is called a pod. There's other names, different words that are used for it, but it's a pod. It's a pool within the swimming pool. So if there is a major crack, you want to be able to have a containment area that water leaks into. With the drainage system going outside of the building, in most cases, it usually goes down like your typical water extension where water needs to leave the building, whether it's sewage or into another drainage tank. I was in Toronto last year and I worked on this 40,000 gallon containment tank that had a filtration system because of chlorine. Believe it or not, it had to go through a secondary filtration tank for the chlorine to go into the sewage system. It was a 40,000 gallon containment tank. Went in, did some training with Multiseal, which is a very large company in Toronto, Canada, which was a lot of fun because it was only 4 feet high and I'm 6'1". I'm still walking like I'm slower, so it was fun. It's good. So I love being on site with contractors. That's my favorite thing to do.
So with that standard that you guys worked on, when you compare, like looking at local building codes across the country, do they really cover, containment, the pod type deal or proper waterproofing of suspended elevated pools? Or is this going to be something across the country that's vastly going to have to be added to building codes for public and private pools?
And that's a good point, Lauren. There's some variations of pods. Some pools don't have pods. They just sit there and suspend, and they're held up by beams and posts, and they leak. I always think as a precaution, they should have a pod. In case there is a disaster. I mean, these pools, they can go 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 stories up. The higher these pools go, the more they're going to deflect, the more movement they have. It's like this theory here. At the bottom, you see little movement. As it goes higher, you get more movement. They should have containment, just in case there's a crack or a disaster, or a pipe even blows.
What can existing pools that have already been built do to better themselves if they're a suspended elevated pool?
Yeah, it's impossible to build a pod now. But that would be very expensive. The pools that are existing without pods would be very expensive. So you waterproof them, make sure they're waterproofed properly. Using
something like one of your product.
Yeah, Basecrete. I mean, it's what I consider the best on the market. It's the best on the market because of its adhesion and flexibility, and it is cement based. I mean, if you really want to waterproof a swimming pool, the best way is to put polyurea, rubberized material in it, a vinyl liner. They have so much more flex in the material. They're not very appealing to look at. The Cadillac of the pool industry is a concrete vessel with piles of concrete with plaster, and that's ideal. Again, it's going back to having a Rolls Royce with a really inexpensive paint job. It's just, or don't paint it at all and let it rust.
So if we have an existing, let's say, public swimming pool, it's an elevated pool, it's the, older, nope, not going to be able to put a pot in, but they want to use Basecrete, to waterproof. And they got to resurface their pool anyway. So they're going to be taking care of all this. They're going to waterproof it now at this point with your product. Can the, they love their Pebble Tech, like the gem coats and stuff like that. Can that be applied over your Basecrete material?
Yes.
So that they can get their same look back. So the Basecrete would be underneath that, and then they would apply their gem coat above that.
Yeah, and the other thing about that's so unique about us is if you were to compare us to a bond coat for plaster, the other thing that's very important first, I'll add this first. So when you're building a pool that is usually suspended, that are above 1 or 2 stories and up, they're usually built in place with forms, so the walls are separate from the floor, unless it's a gunite, which is rare in the suspended pool, where it's monolithic. Waterproofing them are a lot easier. Then you have the poured in place concrete where you have the different transitions. So proper waterproofing techniques is very important because where the wall meets the floor, there's always a separation. They move at 2 different intervals. So we teach people how to properly waterproof these pools. And we have 39 reps out in the country that travel and certified contractors every day. Which is no cost to anybody. We take the time to do that because we find that's really important. Proper waterproofing techniques is really, really important. So the bonding material, you can bond it to these poured in place concrete because plaster will not stick to smooth surfaces. So we recommend a minimum concrete surface profile, which is CSP, minimum of 7 to 8. You want it really rough so you get a nice teeth for the plaster. Or, if you want do your tile pool, you want to create a nice surface for the thin set to be applied to. The rougher the surface, the better the bonding. And as we all know, plaster likes to hydrate really, really fast. And you want to be able to keep it intact as it's hydrating, so it has a nice teeth biting into it. So our adhesion rate is so superior from what is a standard of other material in the industry that typical bond coats is about 2,500 to 3,000 PSI. We're at close to 7,000. Our adhesion rate is 1,765. It's huge. Our standard pull rate, that means if you want to pull plaster off of substrate, and when you're pulling it off of Basecrete, we're up to 350 pounds per square inch, which is phenomenal. So that bonding thing is so important. We want to be able to bond it, which is very important. There is opposition out there with pool plaster manufacturing companies that they want to say, well, we want to put our plaster on top of our own bond coat on top of Basecrete. I'm thinking, well, Basecrete's the only waterproofing bond coat on the market. Why would you want to do that when our bonding material and flexibility is so much more superior? And we do a lot of them. Basecrete right now is averaging over 1,000 pools a month waterproofing in our swimming pool division.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And we're happy. We're busy.
And you're busy all over the world.
Yeah, we're starting to dominate in Europe with that industry, which is really fun because we get to go to Europe and we get to have fun there.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier about you have representatives around the country that can train pool contractors and pool builders. Yeah. So let's elaborate a little bit more on that, since I love training and this is training for proper waterproofing. So just give them a little bit more information, how they would, if they wanted to reach out after listening to this podcast episode, how would they find out about reaching one of those representatives and getting training because they're interested?
Well, and we get those calls every day. So you go to info@basecreteusa.com. You send a letter. This is who you are. This is what you want to do. We start off by sending them information and videos. And then we offer that, where are you? We'll most likely have a rep in that area. And in the beginning, I was virtually I was traveling all over the country, being the guy that would get dirty on site and I do it all the time. Actually, I'm doing it tomorrow. I'm doing it on Thursday. I'm driving to Jacksonville. I mean, anything to get me out of the office. I love it. I get down, I get dirty with the guys. I mean, I'm a good applicator. I've trained thousands of contractors in my 47 years. We find out where they are and we say, listen, we have a rep. Would you like to have one of our reps in the hole with you? And actually get inside the vessel. And they all say yes, they all love it. And then we send them a certificate once we know that they're comfortable and we're comfortable having them. It's free. And why not take it? And eliminates a lot of complaints, because even though Basecrete's an amazing product with a lot of discrepancies it can go through, there can still be issues like people putting it on too thin, applying the second coat too early, it's freezing, it's way too hot and never flashing. So there's some good rules to what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Awesome.
It's an awesome product. I'm glad to have had you on the podcast today, Vito. I wanted people to hear more about waterproofing, elevated suspended pools. You're like the guy in the pool industry. I know that knows the most about concrete and waterproofing than anybody else. So
in my veins, one of these days I'll have to explain to you how the pyramids were built, because I have a theory for that.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Vito, and you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Lauren. What a pleasure. Have a wonderful day yourself. Thank you.
Thanks for diving in today with the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. Be sure to follow us on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. And feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts so more aquatic professionals like you can learn about the show. We appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Let's Talk About Pools podcast.